Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've been anywhere near true crime media lately, you've probably heard about the Mackenzie Shirilla murder conviction, because this case has sparked some absolutely fierce debates. It is a story where a deeply tragic, fatal legal reality totally collides with this bizarre quest for international fame. It's honestly wild. Today we're going to break the whole thing down. We're looking at the disturbing pre-crash evidence, the crazy post-crash behavior, and some jailhouse phone calls that have left legal commentators literally speechless.
Okay, let's jump right in with a quote that I think perfectly captures just how surreal this entire situation is. When legal analysts were reviewing recent jailhouse calls, they described Shirilla and her mother with one specific word: giddy. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. We are talking about a murder conviction. Lives were lost, and the reaction isn't somber reflection or remorse, it's a palpable excitement about becoming famous. It is a completely jarring disconnect between the grim reality of a prison sentence and the kind of intoxicating allure of media attention.
But to really understand how we even got to this bizarre media circus, we have to ground ourselves in the established facts from before the crash. So let's get into Section 1, Texts and a Toxic Bond.
News commentators who have dug into the evidence have emphasized that the pre-crash text messages between Shirilla and her boyfriend are incredibly dark. They are very difficult to read. We're not talking about your typical teenage arguments here. Analysts point out that these messages reveal a highly erratic, disturbing mindset. So instead of painting a picture of some innocent mistake, commentators argue that these texts showcase a psychological state that's, well, completely cold-blooded.
Because it wasn't just a few bad texts, right? It was textbook toxic. And that's not just speculation. This destructive, volatile dynamic has been totally corroborated by schoolmates and even past body cam footage. When you take a step back and piece together that behavioral history, the testimonies, and those really tough text messages, commentators argue you see an undeniable pattern of volatility that tragically culminated in that fatal crash. Moving from that cold, hard evidence to the post-conviction fallout, let's look at Section 2, Jail Calls and Media Fame.
This is where things get really jarring. People magazine reported on a jailhouse phone call that is just a shocking contrast to the gravity of her situation. You can hear Shirilla and her mother sounding utterly thrilled by the international press coverage, saying things like, "The UK knows, the Daily Mail is reading." Analysts listening to this were absolutely stunned. I mean, instead of talking about appeals or legal strategies or the tragedy itself, the focus is squarely on their audience reach. It turns a courtroom reality into this twisted sort of reality TV excitement.
And the delusion goes so deep, you guys. The family actually discussed hoping that Kim Kardashian would swoop in and advocate for her case. You know, since Kim Kardashian has attached herself to cases of wrongfully jailed innocent people. By hoping for her involvement, commentators note that the family is aggressively projecting this narrative that Shirilla is a completely innocent victim of the system. Well, that delusion hit a brick wall pretty fast. Kardashian formally passed on the case, leaving their whole media strategy dead in the water.
But obviously, Kardashian's rejection didn't stop the media train. Let's get into Section 3, the true crime documentary. Right now, there is a massive divide in how this story is being told to the public. On one hand, you have this popular documentary. If you watch the first 20 minutes, you might honestly walk away thinking this was a tragic accident, that she was wrongfully charged, especially hearing claims of remorse and marijuana use. But on the flip side, you have legal commentators who've actually looked at the trial evidence, and they firmly point out that the evidence of guilt is overwhelming. They see the parents' media campaign not as a search for the truth, but as pure delusion masking erratic, documented behavior. It literally shows you exactly how powerful editing and framing can be. And to completely counter that documentary narrative of her being a remorseful victim, commentators frequently highlight her highly unusual post-crash actions. After the fatal crash, Shirilla was out attending concerts, and get this, she even dressed up as a skeleton for Halloween. When people confronted them about this, her mother claimed they were just trying to have a normal life. But for analysts looking at this case, that glaring lack of appropriate remorse is a really tough pill to swallow. Commentators have gone on record calling this behavior despicable, and it completely shatters the image of a grieving, innocent survivor.
Still, despite all that overwhelming evidence cited by the experts, there is one single, lingering question that fuels the remaining public doubt. Let's look at Section 4, Unpacking the Intent.
This is the question that literally anchors the entire debate. If you believe the commentators who say she was acting with cold-blooded, premeditated intent to murder her boyfriend, well, why use a method that puts your own life at such an extreme, uncontrollable risk? Why not do something that guarantees your own safety?
It's the one piece of the puzzle that makes people pause and wonder, was it maybe just a horrific accident after all?
But commentators suggest a chilling final theory to answer that exact question. Their argument is that she wasn't just acting out of erratic craziness, and it wasn't a driving error. The theory is simply this: she never planned on walking away from that crash either. When you look back at the dark texts, the toxic relationship, and the sheer velocity of the crash, analysts argue there is a very fair case to be made that this was intended to be fatal for everyone inside that vehicle. She just happened to survive it.
Which leaves us with a lot to think about. We've seen the dark evidence, the toxic texts, and the chilling theories. And we've contrasted all of that with jailhouse excitement over the Daily Mail and carefully edited documentaries. So it forces us to ask, does true crime media framing actually change the fundamental truth of the case? Or does it just manipulate our perception of reality? How easily can public discourse be swayed when a tragedy is packaged as entertainment? Keep that in mind the next time you press play on a true crime doc. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it helped clarify the incredible complexities behind the headlines.